Modern day living exposes us to all kinds of autoimmune triggers from our environment and from the Western diet, which is loaded with refined sugars and carbs, trans fat, and GMOs. The quality of our food today also has fewer vitamins and minerals and more toxins. Additionally, it's not possible to completely eliminate our exposure to parasites. We're also exposed to many different environmental toxins such as pesticides, heavy metals, molds, and mycotoxins, allergens, and more. Over time, these toxins combined with poor nutrition lead to a buildup of toxins in the body. Eventually, the body will start to feel run down and become the perfect environment for autoimmune disease. Big Pharma sells medicine that only masks the symptoms and causes unwanted side effects, resulting in experiencing different symptoms without fixing the problems. In this episode, we'll take a closer look at the different types of autoimmune diseases, their root causes and specific triggers, and how we can address these without taking care of the symptoms temporarily. We'll look at the signs of an overworked system and learn the difference between disease at a cellular level and at a glandular level. Our experts talk about the role genetics play in autoimmune disease and what we can do to prevent and reverse its effects. Here, we'll help you to feel empowered and learn what you can do to take control of your body and stop autoimmune disease, even if it's in your genetics. Dr. Geringer, we have been going deep into understanding truly what autoimmune disease is, why it's happening, why people are going through this right now, why it's so prevalent, why it's so debilitating, why conditions and systems, why conditions develop over years and decades due to these root cause triggers that we've been discovering together. And so I'm just really excited about what we're diving into, about what people are going to be taking away from this. So why don't I put it back over to you to help define what autoimmunity is and what's truly driving this epidemic.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here, Jonathan. When we talk about autoimmune disease, we are talking about multiple organ dysfunction. It's not just one particular organ, it's your whole entire body. So you have an overworked immune system. Your immune system is going on overdrive. Also, your immune system is totally exhausted because it's on that overdrive all the time. So most of patients that have these autoimmune signs and symptoms, they feel tired, but they're wired. They cannot shut down because that immune system is totally on like that high octane output, overworked. What happens when you overworked? You get very tired. Let's summarize this a little bit. You have cellular and then you have glandular. What is that? A lot of times these signs and symptoms occur at what we call a cellular level before it actually affects your glands. And most of this immune system dysfunction occurs in our gut. So we talk about intestinal permeability. What is that? It is called leaky gut. I'm pretty sure that you've heard that term, leaky gut. So we have these tight junctions in our gut. These are mucosal lining that protects your body from foreign allergens or foreign pathogens known as parasites or even viruses. So when these tight junction gets loosened up, what happens is that all this debris starts to seep into your body, starts to seep right into your bloodstream and cause this cascade of all these autoimmune conditions. And most of the common autoimmune conditions that we see is Hashimoto's, lupus, IBD, irritable bowel disease, type 1 diabetes, and now they classify type 2 diabetes as an autoimmune disease. Multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, and psoriasis. So there are about 80 to 100 different types of autoimmune diseases out there. The sad part about this is that when you're diagnosed with one autoimmune disease, your chance of having multiple autoimmune diseases increases. So when we talk about all this stuff, it's like, Dr. Kathleen, why me? Why am I having these problems? Why is this happening to me? What is the root cause? It's not just one thing, it's multifactorial. When we talk about autoimmune condition, we talk about genetics, environmental, physical, and emotional. So this whole cascade of the body getting confused between what's self and what non-self. For example, if you put a nutrition, a substance or anything inside your body, first thing your body is going to do is this a friend or is it a foe? When it is a friend, it goes right down the correct pathway. Okay, this is good for my body. I'm going to utilize it. I'm going to feed my organs with it. Let me feed my lungs, my heart, my kidneys, my adrenals, my thyroid. But if you feed your body with the wrong stuff, or if this zymoline opens up and causes that gap in that junction, what happens is that these food allergens or these pathogens starts to seep right through that junction. So what happens? It becomes a foe. So it sends a signal to your body, to your immune system that say, hey, let's protect our body. Let's go in there and let's attack all this stuff to clean it out. Well, we call that inflammation. The root cause of most illnesses and diseases goes back to inflammation. So inflammation in the body is actually a good thing. Yes, it is. It's a good thing. Why? Because it's like an alarm system. It's letting your body know that, hey, wait a minute, pay attention to me, something's going on in there. Going back to why is this happening to me? So let's break it down to genetics first. We have something called epigenetics. Epigenetics is your gene expression. It is the environment that actually allows your body to either switch on this gene expression or switch off. So that can actually affect your offspring. That's like incredible because the primary structure of your DNA is still your DNA. But now we have these environmental toxins or these heavy metal toxins or whatever that's in that environment is changing your gene expression.
Okay, Dr. Geringer, so now as we're kind of uncovering some of these issues, you talked about multiple different types of autoimmune diseases. And again, we know that there's a spectrum. We know that traditionally there'd been 80 diseases that were classed as autoimmune. Then now it's closer to 100. But then more recent findings have pushed the number up as high as 200 different diseases as classified then as autoimmune. Heart disease being one, which not many people have even heard of that being autoimmune, but that science is showing us that it is. And then we're also discovering that Alzheimer's and dementia is, we've talked about that, and type 2 diabetes, diseases that we didn't understand to be autoimmune. And that's because some of these root cause triggers that we're talking about, knowing and understanding that all disease in the body, like everything else in life, is cause and effect, right? It didn't just happen. And once we understand cause and effect, then we get less prone to simply blaming genetics for why we are the way that we are, instead of looking at our choices and how we can use our choices to undo genetic damage if it may in fact exist for us. However, most of the time, I know what you and I are seeing is that people are dealing with their own choices, not necessarily even that of their parents. And you just combine these factors, again, for the cases where people do have genetic issues, then you start to see that perfect storm.
Exactly. So just like you mentioned, what's happening, is it our nutrition? What's going on with our body? So we are all about what is the root cause. See, traditional medicine in the Western world, you have a disease, you have an illness, here's a pill for it. Great, it calms everything down, everything's fine. But did we really look in to see what the root cause is? Did we really look into The gut issues, did we look at their cellular level? What happened there that led the body to attack your own glands? What happened? So what we want to do is that everything boils down to inflammation. When the body is inflamed, that sends us an alarm saying that, hey, what's going on with my body? Pay attention to me. So of course, we have multiple things that's happening. Yes, we blame it on the genetics, but your genetic loads the gun, your lifestyle pulls the trigger. So the choices that we make and what we want to do is that we want to safeguard our body. We want to fortify our body with the correct nutrients, so then all this stuff becomes what we call resistance to what you're feeling. So we have this thing called epigenetics. That means the environment can actually change your genetic expression. That means it's able to turn on a gene or turn off a gene. That's, to me, that's like, wow, we're able to have more control over what we're able to do and how we're able to protect our body from heavy metals, how we're going to protect our body from parasites, pathogens, or even food allergens. The next thing that's really interesting, breakthrough medicine, is what we call nutrigenomics. Nutrigenomics is nutritional genomics, how nutrition now can really help your body able to express your genes. That to me is absolutely amazing. Now we have more control over it. Sometimes we can't control of what's hidden inside our food. We talk about genetic modified foods, but we know that, hey, if that's gonna alter our gene expression, what are we going to do? Let's put all these great nutrients back into our body, because we cannot live in a bubble. We live in this world that's full of fertilizer, glyphosates, full of genetic modified foods that our body does not recognize, and it sets off this whole autoimmune response because the body starts saying, okay, that's a foreign substance, okay, fine, I'll deal with it. But if you keep bombarding it, putting all these processed food into your body, having to deal with the environmental toxins, what is going to happen? Your body will get exhausted, it will get tired, then it's going to start breaking down. And that's where the symptoms starts to show up. When we talk about nutrigenomics, what we want to do is add the nutrition back into your body just to protect your body at that cellular level. But before you even do that, it's so important for you to detoxify the body. Get rid of that food allergen. Get rid of those parasites. Get rid of those pathogens, so you have a fresh new plate to start out with.
That's awesome, Dr. Geringer. Now you're giving some amazing explanations and reasons so people can just start to finally feel like they understand, and that the things that are going on that feel and seem so mysterious are in fact simple science that can be understood by anyone, cause and effect. These scenarios help us to understand, hey, look, this is where the problem is coming from. And if I do in fact have these issues, whether it's toxic metals or parasites, or the issues with inflammatory foods, including genetically modified organisms like GMO soy, GMO corn, wheat being its own issue, not being classified as a GMO because it was modified in the 60s before the 1994 GMO laws came in. So it flies under the classification, but the genetic mutation is in fact classing it. There are autoimmune diseases that manifest symptoms in the gut. There are two commonly known ones, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and celiac disease. Both are triggered by eating products that contain wheat gluten or GMOs. What we really want to do is learn about these triggers and why they are causing these inflammatory responses in some individuals and not others. We also want to determine the relationship between consuming gluten and leaky gut, and we look at GMOs in detail and learn about our exposure to pesticides by eating these foods. We also consider how Big Pharma is frequently selling medication that has negative effects on our health, such as antacids, which aim to reduce stomach acid. These medications are changing the gut bacteria, which is not good, and their interferences put you at risk for developing autoimmune disease. What should we be doing to prevent this? Well, take a look at some of the things that you can do to promote gut health and overall body health. I want to take just a moment to share with you about a special program that we have for people that are looking for extra help. Now, what we've found is that people struggle because they feel alone in the journey and they're finding themselves guessing and experimenting so much, and they get discouraged in the process. And that's one of the most disappointing things for me as I've shared this information. A lot of people have taken the information and they have felt alone in the process. And when they've come up to something like a challenge, they've often felt like, maybe it's time to give up. And then that halts their healing journey. And I've felt so discouraged seeing that in people. And I've wanted to solve that problem. And that's what we solved. You're gonna see some stories here in this episode about people that have had transformation, like Natalia, and you'll see this through the series, and you'll see these amazing breakthrough case studies of people that have got tremendous results. And one of the most profound things that you'll find here is that they actually not only use the information, but they use the special program that we created to get these results. And this is what we're offering. And not only are we offering it, making it available to you, but we're also giving that as at a fraction of the price that we normally offer it for, along with a lot of bonuses that we don't give at other times. And some of these things include going through a full 4-month program of supplements specifically designed. We've had experts, doctors from this series helped to come up with this program and the formulations to help remove these toxic infections and help restore the gut and remove parasites and toxic heavy metals. And this is the program that Natalia used. It's with Well of Life. And we've found people get tremendous results when they use this. And so we've made it available to you, as well as the weekly sessions that we have with the doctors from this series, like Dr. Brooke Goldner and Dr. Khan and Dr. Geringer. And they're going to be sharing with you how to stick with this protocol, how to get transformations, answering your questions. And it's really a very enjoyable, fun process. And you look to your left and you look to your right and you see other people getting results, and it helps you to continue when you feel stuck or you're not sure what to do next. You're getting the direct advice and you're seeing other people in this coaching session to also going through the same experiences, and you watch them learn and grow and you find yourself doing the same thing. So we've made this available to you. We're meeting also weekly with a nutritionist to make sure that we're on the right path with the diet and sticking with this and overcoming hurdles and challenges. And we're making sure that this is tailored to you, and that's why you get to voice what's going on for you, so the doctors and the nutritionists can answer you directly, as well as having some support directly one-on-one with a health coach during the time that you're in the program. So you can learn more about this by clicking below. And again, we only have this available for a very limited time, just during the screening of this series. And so then we close it down after that, and we're focusing on serving the people that have said yes, so we can get them the best results possible. And to make that possible for you, we've made it available with payment plans and other ways. To make sure this is something that you can do, we've made some options available so it's affordable for you. So you can simply click the link below to check it out so you can learn more and take advantage while we're offering this very special discount during this time, with all these bonuses of direct support from our community, our experts, and with this special program designed to help you heal, along with the weekly modules that we have teaching you how to go about healing the root cause of autoimmune disease, inflammation, or whatever other issue you might be struggling with, or simply how you're trying to prevent or achieve the most abundant health that you can. Again, just click below to learn more about that. Dr. Perlmutter, I'd love to quiz you in regards to the grain wheat specifically. Is it a problem for people? Is there a reason why there's diseases like celiac disease that is known by the public to be an aversion specifically to wheat and also to gluten? And then we see other diseases that are becoming more and more commonly known to be linked to wheat, like Hashimoto's. That's now fairly common knowledge to a degree. Is it a problem for some people, for all people, and if so, why?
Let's look at celiac disease. It's a very small percentage of the population that has that autoimmune condition, which is specifically an issue with response to gluten. Very well defined, very well understood. The relationship of gluten exposure to other problems is not through the mechanism that's involved in celiac disease. Gluten is related to autoimmune conditions across the board, likely through the effects of gluten on gut permeability and the relationship then of the leakiness or the permeability of the gut and activation of the immune system, keeping the immune system in check, leading to what we call diseases of autoimmunity. We know that celiac disease uniquely has some genetic risk factors, as do many of the other autoimmune conditions, like Hashimoto's thyroiditis and even type 1 diabetes and systemic lupus erythematosus, lupus as it were. But again, I think it's important to understand in these other non-celiac related issues that these are not genetically determined diseases. You inherit a predisposition, but other factors that then engage your life, your lifestyle choices over which you have control, can then ultimately, in the face of your genetic risk, then cause the disease to manifest. Having eaten poor foods, for example, that don't nurture your gut bacteria, a diet that's high in gluten that threatens the integrity of the gut lining, many other factors can conspire in the face of your increased risk because you carry certain genes from mom and dad to then suddenly manifest as Hashimoto's disease. So we're seeing autoimmune conditions on the rise. Here in America, that's for sure, but we're seeing it globally as well. And two things that are happening globally are an increase of both autoimmune and inflammatory conditions, things like diabetes, Alzheimer's, heart disease, and cancer. And the other major change around the globe is what we call the westernization of the global diet, meaning that around the globe, people are starting to eat like Americans, and that's scary. What does it mean? It means the nutritional quality of their foods is down in the gutter. It means they're eating way too much sugar and refined carbohydrates, not getting enough nutrients, and not getting enough of something that's extremely important as it relates to our conversation about autoimmune disease, and that is dietary fiber. Why is dietary fiber so important? Why do we need, and specifically prebiotic fiber, the type of fiber in certain vegetables, in garlic, onions, leeks, dandelion greens, kale, etc., because that fiber is the food for our gut bacteria. When we feed them appropriately, they heal the gut lining, that reduces inflammation and levels off our immune system so we're not as likely to develop one of these very common autoimmune conditions.
Now, coming over to the why around wheat, we have a bit of awareness around genetically modified organisms, GMOs, and from my research in 1994, it became the laws that then mandated that this was classed as a genetically modified organism. Corn, soy, and many others then fell under this banner, and of being genetically modified. And see if you have a different take on any of this. But what was interesting in my research is that wheat was altered before that date and didn't fall under that classification. So I think what's interesting, people can go into a store here and buy organic wheat, but then the question is, has the gene been altered? What's your take? I know that there's a Nobel Peace Prize won as well for the alteration that happened on the gene on wheat, and to me, I think this could be really why it has such a big problem for our bodies, but I'm curious what you think.
So let me offer up some clarification of this information as I see it, because I think there's a lot of misinformation that's out there. The reason that we have genetically modified food by and large, or genetically modified seeds for soy and for corn, etc., is that then that plant can be sprayed with an herbicide called glyphosate, and not have any ill effects, but the weeds around that plant will be killed. So the modification of the gene of this plant allows it to be resistant to the damaging effects of this glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in the product Roundup, which people can buy and use in their homes, which has been classified now as a probable human carcinogen by the World Health Organization. Kind of scary that millions of metric tons of this chemical are being applied to the foods that people generally eat across the planet. And the World Health Organization characterizes that chemical as being a probable human carcinogen. Well, what could go wrong? I'll leave that one to hang in the air. You know, as it relates to wheat, we don't really see commercially available genetically modified wheat. I wouldn't say it doesn't exist because it has been found. It actually had escaped from a laboratory and some genetically modified wheat was found, but we don't see it available in retail. You can't buy wheat that is genetically modified, and that's a bit surprising because, you know, people who castigate wheat sometimes do so saying, well, you know, it's GMO, it's bad for you. That's not the case. Wheat is not genetically modified by and large what we consume. Whereas 90% of our soy, 90% of our corn, these are highly modified and oftentimes tainted with this chemical glyphosate. Further, this is the type of foodstuffs given to agricultural animals to fatten them up, the cows, etc., that makes beef. And there are changes in the gut bacteria of these organisms that then create meat that's not really ideal for us to consume. It's a powerful argument in terms of going more vegetarian. But that said, let's talk about why wheat does matter. And now we can talk about our gluten story. So wheat, barley, and rye are the plant sources of a sticky protein that's called gluten. And why did we write about gluten years ago in the book Grain Brain? And how has it been validated that we really should reconsider the idea that more than 40% of the food sold in America right now has some form of wheat or gluten added to it. That's a scary proposition when you think about what I'm about to tell you. And what I'm about to tell you is that aside from the very small number of people who have celiac disease, there are a large group of individuals, a significant percentage of the global population that is not having an autoimmune condition called celiac, but nonetheless is responding negatively when they're exposed to gluten. We call that non-celiac gluten sensitivity, as was recently described in the Journal of the American Medical Association by researchers at Harvard University, Harvard School of Medicine. So we know that this is a very real thing and that it may involve who knows how many, 20, 30, 40, 80% of the population. So that's important that if a percentage of a population shouldn't be consuming gluten because they can have problems, they can have joint pain, skin disorders, neurological issues, epilepsy, you name it, from consuming gluten, we need to get the public on board and talk about it. More recently, another publication coming from Harvard School of Medicine revealed that in their laboratory, when they tested the biopsies of the intestines from individuals who did not have celiac disease and did not even have non-celiac gluten sensitivity, gluten still caused increased permeability or leakiness of the gut lining. To me, that's very, very important. Why? Because the leakiness of the gut lining is front row in terms of being responsible for two things: autoimmunity and inflammation. And inflammation is actually very important. The number one cause of death on planet Earth, according to the World Health Organization, are what are called chronic degenerative conditions. Coronary artery disease, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's. These are inflammatory conditions. And when we look at what are the things that are involved in inflammation in human beings, really high on the list is leakiness of the gut. And that's what causes me to call attention to this relationship and write books and give lectures about why we might want to consider throttling down our gluten exposure. Now, the other part of the story that's really very important is that by and large these days, the products that people consume that are made from wheat are really powerful sources of carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates. And that's a surefire way to get into the whole notion of type 2 diabetes, which is beyond epidemic in the developed world right now.
Yeah, for me, the classification, because I think there's likely to be correlation between whatever that process was and the rise in health conditions from wheat, considering that like spelt is an ancient grain. I mean, it hasn't been altered since it was discovered in 700 BC or since it started to be used then. And for me, I see a lot less issues. I'm not saying that it's flawless. I couldn't necessarily speak to that.
Well, let me offer up a point of clarification.
Yeah.
So having had this discussion that wheat is generally not genetically modified and therefore doesn't play into this whole issue of glyphosate, the herbicide, and all that, for which the corn and the soy are GMO, you'd think that therefore eating wheat would be safe as it relates to glyphosate. And the reality is that marketers of these products have convinced farmers, even though the wheat isn't genetically modified, to spray the wheat once it's been harvested using glyphosate as a desiccating or drying agent. So just because wheat is not technically genetically modified, it does not mean in any way, shape, or form that it is free of this dangerous chemical called glyphosate. Now, you know, we've been talking about the dangers of this glyphosate chemical for a long, long time. And now, of course, everyone's heard of it because if you watch television, there are lawsuits. If you've developed one form of cancer or another, you may be entitled to compensation, you name it. But I think it's, you know, that type of mentality follows the research by a number of years. If I can digress into diabetes for a moment, what's causing the insulin to go up? Insulin goes up in response to a diet that's high in sugar. Who knew? The more sugar you eat, the higher your insulin goes, the more likely you are to develop diabetes and Alzheimer's and coronary artery disease and cancer for that matter. So this is a big push here then to get the word out that, you know what, sugar in our diet is not in our best interest. And yet, according to a recent study from the University of North Carolina, of the 1.2 million foods sold in the grocery store here in America, 68% have added sugar. So there's no puzzle here as to why people are sick and why we're having inflammatory issues. A high sugar diet that's challenging this whole insulin system, and it's messing up our gut bacteria, leading to inflammation, which leads us to do what? Eat more sugar. It's a perfect scenario. There is Scandinavian research that reveals that even one course of an oral antibiotic is associated with increased risk of type 2 diabetes. Who knew? We know that the acid blocking drugs that we see advertised on television, the what are called proton pump inhibiting drugs to get rid of dangerous stomach acid, because God forbid we would have acid in our stomach, which we desperately need. I mean, people are taking these acid blocking drugs for the wrong reasons, but nonetheless they dramatically changed the gut bacteria. One study recently published demonstrated that people who commonly take these acid blocking drugs that again are over the counter have about a 40% increased risk of developing dementia, a disease, a situation that has inflammation as one of its powerful mechanisms.
Natalia's story is truly miraculous. She spent 5.5 years in a downward health spiral to the point where she was told by doctors at the Cleveland Clinic that her legs had swelled to such an extreme point that they advised her that it was necessary to amputate both of her legs within 2 weeks of time, or she would face certain death. Throughout her illness, Natalia has seen specialist after specialist and tried multiple remedies. She was distraught at the possibility of losing her legs and didn't believe that there was a cure. But then her friend, who had cancer and had successfully been dealing and putting this condition into remission, recommended that Natalia try the Well of Life supplements. Even though she didn't really believe that they would help, she was determined to try at least one more remedy before agreeing to have her legs amputated. Her recovery, which took over 7 months, shocked and baffled her doctors.
It was 5 years, actually. It was not short time. But for me, it was these 5 years were like one terrible day. One long, terrible day, because it was not life, actually. You know, I just realized recently that I didn't have picture of this time. It even didn't go to my mind to make picture or to do something like, because I look terrible, absolutely terrible.
I'm very curious where you spoke here about life being like one terrible long day. And so your granddaughter went from the age of, this was probably from around age 6 to age 11 during that time.
It was 5.5. She was 6, almost 7.
Yeah, and that's when it started. And so it sounds to me, when you say this, that it sounds like you missed out on a lot of life during those years.
Of course. Now I understand that I had parasites, but they just couldn't find them. Maybe this is where type of parasite that they don't have test for them. I have no idea. But I had candida as well, so I have everything. So this test shows this. But how to treat it? Was big difference. They try many things. I spent so much money for this. I spent actually fortune for this. So first year I spent 40,000. Next year even more, and so on. Just practically I spent all my savings just to find a way. And then I realized that they also couldn't help.
Was it disappointing for you
Oh yes, it was disappointing, because in the beginning all of them told me, oh, don't worry, we will fix it very easy, it will be no problem. But it didn't happen. And I saw that they disappointed also, but not only me. But now I understand why. Only after I found this program. This one, it is right now next to my bed, always. And when I watched this series, it was one word, actually. It was one key word for me. When you need to hear it, this keyword. Keyword was sequence. What is first, what is second, what is third. After that, after first session, I understood that my functional doctors, maybe they did everything right, but not in right order. As a result, I didn't have improvement. But this program, it just shows me exactly step by step what to do, what is first, what is second, what is third, where is problem goes. So it goes to core.
So you feel like you've been born again, like you get to live another life.
Yes, exactly.
You got a second chance.
Yes. And even I think that sometimes I think maybe it's blessing. Not like, because after that you feel, you just love every minute of your life, But before, when you just accept everything as granted,
yeah.
Probably don't feel so big pleasure and any normal things. Like right now I'm cooking with pleasure. Before I didn't like to cook, by the way. Now I just do everything, and it's very, very, it brings me joy. Doesn't matter what I'm doing, reading books or just, watch TV or cooking or walking or doing yoga or maybe meet with friends before Corona.
Yeah.
So it's like right now I have much better life than I had before, maybe.
Why?
Because I have pleasure in each minute. Before, I just didn't think about it. Because it was like, okay, everybody likes this. Now I understand that not everybody likes this. So many people suffering, and this is why I think it's so good program, and this is why I just try to do everything what's possible to, to just spread this and to tell people that it's like you need to look, and you need to, there is answer, there always answer. Yeah, and just when doctor tell you that it's like, it's incurable, don't trust it. Everything curable. Except maybe if you, of course, if they amputate your legs, it's not reversible, yes, but all other is reversible. Maybe not 100%. Maybe damage, of course, was done already to my body by illness and by this medicine, but it doesn't matter.
You have a quality of life.
Yes, exactly. It's enough what I still have. It's enough to be happy.
That's remarkable. So you have that confidence to say things like that. There's nothing incurable. It's a very hopeful statement. I know that if you were sitting in the situation that you were in, I know it's hard for you to go back and to remember what it's. Well, I know that you remember, but I know that it's not easy to go back and access these memories because...
Yeah, I try to forget about it.
Yeah.
Yes, I try not to think about it. Just because I actually, if I even think about it, I don't remember anything because there was nothing. It was empty years filled with pain. I would say like this. So there's nothing close besides this. I don't remember what I did this moment. If I read something, if I watch movie, I don't know. I even don't think so. Nothing was interesting for me, because you just was interested in one thing, just stop this pain. How to stop this pain? Nothing else.
I want to get into the toxins issue. I'll tell you a really cool story, which is this woman named Natalia, and she came in contact with us, and she'd watched our series, and she took some of the supplemental kind of protocols that we were suggesting. She was at Cleveland Clinic. She was told that in 2 weeks she'd have to have her legs amputated. She had vasculitis. Her veins were a tenth the size of what they were supposed to be due to toxic inflammatory levels in her blood. And again, you're a medical doctor, I'm an investigative journalist, so you'll understand these terms in different ways to the way I understand them, but I'm recounting all the facts that she's given to me. She's very well researched on her condition and what was going on for her. She had vasculitis, myelitis, rheumatoid arthritis, and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And the doctors at Cleveland Clinic said nothing can be done for you. No diet will be able to help you from this. No supplement will help you from this. You just need to get this chemotherapy. And it was very high levels. Her inflammation levels in her blood were so high that their blood readings, their lab work, couldn't register it. It was so high. They couldn't get a reading. It was off their charts, which was very interesting, according to what she was explaining with me. And then she got the chemotherapy. It shrank one of her kidneys significantly, so it was obvious that she couldn't continue that, the mixture of the steroids and the chemo. She got on some protocols that we were advising in regards to, she was doing the dietary things that you talk about. She was educating herself through our series, and you're one of the really fantastic experts in our series that teaches how to people to change their diets. And then she did also some supplemental protocols that were based on basically detoxifying the body very directly, not like not something that just makes you go to the toilet and gives you diarrhea. It's not something like that. What she was doing was very direct. It was talking about removing heavy metal toxins and getting parasites out of the body and improving liver and kidney function through specific herbs that target those areas, cleansing the lymphatic system, helping the digestive system, helping with probiotics and other soil-based organisms to help with that. And I spoke to her at the start of this year, and it was in August of last year that she spoke with me. So it was about 6 months that transpired. She was back to swimming, cycling. She was crying, and she sharing her story, saying that she was practically suicidal and her whole life had been turned around, and she was it was just one of the most beautiful moments in time. I was actually just looking up her Facebook yesterday. I was looking at the images of her, and she'd signed off on a house years before, and I was just looking through her Facebook for what I could see, and it just moved me so deeply. Like, here's this woman with all these dreams, and she's Estonian. She was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and this woman, her husband, all these dreams. And then, here she's about to lose her legs. She comes in contact with something that she's very skeptical of, and then she ends up pulling the trigger in a great way and changing her life. And she is back to normal. She's not on any of the drugs, and she is functioning like a regular, healthy person today. And I wouldn't believe it if I didn't see it for myself. I have the video to prove it from her live story, but me bringing this up, I'd like to just talk to you about this kind of thing. How the issues with toxins, I don't understand it in the same way you understand it. I just understand that they're there, and here's the levels at which they work, and here's the solutions. But I would just love for you to explain the science, or what you understand about toxins, how they affect the body, where they're coming from. I know food is a source. I know there's other sources, and there's reasons why it's in the food, from glyphosate, from other issues with genetically modified foods, and simply just highly processed artificial ingredients. How are they interacting with the body? How are they creating situations like this? Because I'd like to know why this woman got into this state. She wasn't trying to live unhealthy. So she got into this state, and there's a lot of people that try to be healthy that end up in watching my content because they're in situations like her and they're still trying to live healthy. So how do they get in these situations? How does this happen?
There are two types of toxins. There's what we call endogenous waste or endogenous toxins. The word endogenous means self-produced within your body. And the body is always producing free radicals, and it's like a factory that takes in raw material and makes a product, but produces a lot of garbage in the process. And the garbage is okay to be produced because food, good healthy food, contains antioxidants and the nutrients we need to process, remove, and package the garbage. But in a person without a good diet, the free radicals escape their normal confines within the cell. They start to overwhelm cellular machinery, and we build up other toxins, including ammonia, uric acid, urea, aldehydes, lipofuscin, advanced glycation end products. I'm naming some toxins that build up and age people and create disease. And these toxins are not from the external environment. These are toxins the own body builds up when we don't eat healthfully. And that becomes a major part of our toxic load. And then we have the exogenous toxin. The word exogenous means toxins coming from the outer world, and they could be pesticides, chemicals, mercury, microplastics, all types of PCBs, all types of toxins we take in from cosmetics, that we take in from putting sunscreens on our skin that penetrate through our skin, that the residual effects on an organic oatmeal that comes from the glyphosate that came from the farm next door, and now you're getting, so we're getting all types of combinations of exogenous waste and endogenous waste that are mixed up in your cells, that are primarily the more fat-soluble toxins are more powerfully stored in the fat supply, and you don't get rid of your toxins unless you get rid of a lot of your fat, and the body needs the nutrients and the helpful substances to help remove those toxins. Your body does have the mechanisms to remove toxic waste products, both the ones that are produced by the body and some externally exposed waste. If you lived 1 million years ago, you still would be exposed to toxins from the external world, because even natural foods have some toxins in them that the body can process and remove. But within the confines and the amounts that we can normally accept in a natural world, the body has the ability to remove those toxins, keep itself clean, and do the work it needs to do. In the present world, we're overloaded with not just an overloaded amount of toxic waste product, but we're not nutritionally giving the body the raw materials to deal with the toxins and process them and eliminate them. And I talk about this as a primary feature of my work because I explain how the lack of micronutrient exposure allows the body to build up more toxic waste products, which we call toxicosis, which is a combination of different types of waste products, particularly reactive oxygen species and advanced glycation end products, major cause of diabetics to become blind with diabetic retinopathy, or lose kidneys, or lose neuropathy, become neuropathy. It ages us and destroys our tissues. We have higher circulating of these toxins. But I'm also saying that it causes an addiction to the food, because when we not digest food, it makes us overeat calories. Because when we're not processing and digesting food, and we're in that catabolic state where we're just utilizing the food we ate, is when the body most effectively detoxifies and causes repair to occur. So the body can remove toxins more readily in the non-feeding and non-digestive state. But because people are so toxic, they get to that state where they're not feeding, and they start to feel shaky, fatigued, headache, stomach cramping, nauseous, or even a little bit of withdrawal depression or anxiety from the food they were eating. They start to feel ill when they're not eating all the time. So they think that those ill feelings are hunger. They mistakenly think that those things are hunger, and they got to keep overeating calories just to feel on an even keel. They have to overly stimulate themselves with food because they don't tolerate the way they feel in the detox phase of the digestive cycle. So the digestive cycle has the anabolic phase where you're eating and digesting, and then when you finish, because you're putting things into the body, you can't remove things effectively when you're putting things in. It's while you're burning the stored calories that your body goes into the heightened phase of detoxification, which occurs more during sleep. And people have to keep putting calories, excess calories all day. The toxicity of their diet and the lack of nutrients in their diet leads to an addictive type of overeating behavior that can't be stopped biologically, because it gets overwhelmingly impossible to change their diet or to eat less calories when their diet is toxic and not supplying them with the adequate raw materials.
Even the most severe symptoms of autoimmune disease can be reversed with natural medicine and protocols. We look at the question and answer session with Dr. Khan, where we talk about Natalia's testimonial and how she'd spent so much money on Western medicine desperately looking for healing. She didn't give up, and her story is living proof that following natural protocols can restore your quality of life and heal your body from autoimmune disease. We've had stress in society before. We've been around for, we have recorded civilization for several thousand years, right? And over those years, we've seen stress in all those different contexts. And yes, we have better detection methods so we can report on these things more fluidly, but anyone that really wants to look at the science, it's very clear that we have a dramatic rise in autoimmune disease, and it shouldn't be a shock to people when we look at how many more toxins we're exposed to. Babies on average are being born with 287 chemicals as found in the umbilical cord, which shows that it's been transferred. The baby has those chemicals. What's the effect on the health? And these range from everything from Teflon to glyphosate to other forms of pesticides. They all register in the body as things that create what we would call the autoimmune reaction. But now what's interesting is that we understand that the body is just erroneously attacking itself, but we don't ask the question why. And if we ask the question why, we'd start realizing the body was on our side, not fighting against us, it was fighting for us. What are we doing that's causing so much harm? It's a wonder why we're not dead when we have that many chemical exposures. For example, if we're exposed to lead and mercury, our receptor sites are going to take those, the same receptor sites that are supposed to take in calcium and magnesium and potassium are going to take in those heavy metals. They're going to get distributed to bones and other places and other organs for critical organ function, and it's going to impede all these functions, and it's going to, you're going to suffer. These are poisons, they're not supposed to be in the body. So what do you think about this, Dr. Garanjay? Are you seeing what I'm talking about?
Oh, absolutely. What we're seeing is, again, everybody comes back and blame it on their genetics. It's my genetics. And I said, no, it's not your genetics. Your genetic loads the gun, but your lifestyle pulls the trigger. So if genetically you're prone to all this autoimmune, why not protect yourself from it? Why not protect yourself from this environmental toxins like glyphosate? I'm a golfer, and these golf courses are beautifully manicured with all these fertilizer, which is high in glyphosate. So what happens is that it creates this environmental toxins that impairs our thyroid function, impairs our other hormonal pathway, that impairs our tight junction. So these tight junction becomes loose. So all these pathogens start to permeate, it starts to go right through the intestinal tract, going back to that leaky gut situation again. And that leaky gut situation, if that's not under control, it creates this gut-brain kind of like scenario here where it goes into, seeps through that blood-brain barrier and causing depression, causing anxiety issues, causing all sorts of trauma to the body that affects our mood, creating emotional dysfunction, creating more prone to infections, parasites.
Wow, and when we look at this generational challenge that we face, where we're not only looking at our own health, but the health of our parents and the health of their parents, perhaps just a few generations there, perhaps what you see here is that we need to actually repair and some of the damage that's been done over time. And because of that, we look at the animal studies, for example, and we see that with genetically modified foods, there are a bunch of symptoms that manifest in the lifespan of the animal eating it, but then there are some that only show up in the offspring and down a couple of generations from all kinds of unusual things like hair growing on tongues. But these aren't just GMOs that were just tested on rats. These are GMOs that are in our food supply that we eat if we're not asking, is this non-GMO, or looking at the label, and so we'll eat it. Dr. Geringer, when it comes to turning around the situation in the body and targeting the toxic metals, or the parasitic infection, or the tight junction of the intestinal walls, and this being broken and compromised, how do we look at tools that can repair this and go after this so we can just start to correct the whole system, support the body in the healing process, and turn around our condition?
That's a great question, because what we need to do is that we have to address the root cause. What is broken? What's that broken link? What can we do to repair it? First thing we need to do is just detoxify the body. A lot of times when you have that tight junction, it becomes loose like this, and you have protein seeping through. Not only the protein seeping through, you have food allergens, and then it creates this autoimmune response where it weakens your immune system. So more parasites, more fungus, things starts to invade your gut lining. So it causes an imbalance in your microbiome. In order for us to really create this whole system and rebalance that gut microbiome, you have to detoxify. Get rid of those parasites, get rid of those toxins. And how can you do it? Number one, move your bowels. That's so simple. Try to poop every day or even twice a day. I often have patients that say, but Dr. Geringer, I move my bowels every day. How come I still have these issues? Going back, remember how long your small intestine is? It's about 23 feet long. Your large intestine can be approximately 25 to 27 feet long. So maybe you're just dumping only the lower half of your large intestine and not the upper half. So that's why when you introduce new food in, you're burping, you're belching, because it's being fermented. It's permeated right in your gut, and that's, yes, so that's just like disgusting. So I was like, you have to make sure that you put the right nutrients back in there and get that bowel movement going.
Oh yeah, I mean, to be certain, there's been a lot written about this so-called non-celiac gluten sensitivity. Dr. Marius Hadjivassiliou in England really was the pioneer writing about that in the journal Lancet, which is one of the world's most well-respected peer-reviewed medical journals. And Dr. Hajivaslu sort of opened the door for me then to be more vocal about the value of a gluten-free diet. And, you know, my goodness, we've seen so much from just that. Alleviation of joint pain, better sleep, better mood, reduction in headaches. I actually wrote a paper on one of our patients who had suffered from headaches for 30 years. This is a well-to-do kind of investment advisor, and was on narcotics day and night because of his incapacitating headaches. Went on a gluten-free diet and the headaches dramatically improved. I mean, that's information people need to know. Look, I would never claim that a gluten-free diet is going to cure everyone's headaches, but guess what? What if you gave it a try and it worked for you? That's all that matters, right? You only care about yourself. You're an N of 1, and there's no downside at all. What's the risk? No risk. What's the benefit? Maybe nothing, but it may be 100%, but it's somewhere between 0 and 100% with no risk. So why wouldn't you try that?
Fantastic. No, that's great, and I love the emphasis around the benefit of a gluten-free diet and what it can do for people. What it's done for my family is nothing short of remarkable.
Yeah. Hey, we've been talking about glyphosate in our food for a long time. We've been talking about the threat that antibiotics given to livestock to make them fatter, how that represents a threat to us then consuming those foods because there's still antibiotics in their meat. That was recently actually validated in a study from Australia. 70% of the antibiotics used in America go into livestock, not to people, to make these animals fatter and to help them survive when they're living in such horrible conditions that they get infections. And we eat that meat and we imbibe that antibiotic, which threatens our own microbiome, and we cannot afford that.
What effects are GMOs having on our body? To improve our daily diet, we need to understand what we should avoid and why. GMOs, as we learned earlier, are designed to survive pesticides that kill everything else but the crop we end up consuming. These pesticides have an effect on your body and on your gut. This makes GMO foods are likely to cause autoimmune disease. We are controlled by big pharma companies, by food industries that sell GMOs and other foods that are riddled with toxins. We believe that these things are helpful or good for our health, but that's not the case. We have an overprescription of antibiotics, which damages the good bacteria in the gut, and when we pair that along with other medications, poor nutrition, we are causing our immune system to be suppressed. I was in Fort Lauderdale area. I won't say exactly where she lives. Natalia Voloshin, who you saw in the videos. I was with her both on Thursday and Friday and Sunday of this week. And so I filmed with her. But the point I want to bring up here is she had 4 conditions. We could list them all, but the hardest one was vasculitis and then rheumatoid arthritis. And she'd spent, I finally got the numbers. She spent $200,000 on between 20 to 30 specialists over the course of 5.5 years. And she was very suicidal. She explained that more in detail as well, what it's like to go through that and all that pain. And she did not think that anything that we were doing could possibly help her. She thought that it's not possible. So her friend told her about it, and then she just started on one program at a time, like the Ultimate Detox Bundle and this other one. And so basically she did what you guys are doing in the 4-month program, but she did it like ad hoc and added it together, and she stayed consistent. But as you guys, I think, know about her story, she had a complete transformation. She attributes it to this program. So it was just so beautiful. I wept several times just listening to her story. She had a complete transformation, and she had her legs were like elephant size vasculitis. I watched her stand on her head at her house. I have that on camera. She puts her, Pilates and all that. And she's back to swimming and cycling, and she's living an amazing life. She's strong. She can do really strong weights. And this was somebody that the pain was so bad. The only pleasure she had was the thought of wanting to kill herself. And she says that herself. I mean, here's somebody that had gangrene, like legs that were weeks away from going gangrene to the point where she'd need an amputation in 2 weeks, according to Cleveland Clinic medical doctors, who inspected every single one of the supplements she took with Well of Life. Took 30 minutes to review every ingredient, thinking that there must have been a drug in there that was causing the reason why she could get a reduction in inflammation, but there wasn't. And he said, well, there's no contraindications there if you think it's working, but I can't see how this could work. But anyway, really, really cool. But that verify that it's very safe, which is great. She used toxibinders, she used parapurifiers, she used the digestive enzymes, she used probiotics, she used liquid fulvic, she used the liver and kidney support, she used lymph flow. You guys have all those tools. She went gluten-free, and she was not eating things that she was sensitive to, and she's adding them in over time. She's anemic, all those things. So she's, she had more challenges probably than a lot of people. So we have the questions to go through. I want everyone to think about that, because that will make all the difference. And that all the value I can possibly give you is in just telling you that, and having you just stick to it and not deviate, and make sure you don't cheat on the things that you cannot cheat on, the things that I mentioned: taking the products religiously, water consumption, gluten-free, getting off artificial sweeteners, getting sugar out. Those things are the non-negotiables. And the movement helped. A lot of guys here probably aren't doing that movement, aren't getting active. So that's a big game changer. So if she could do that, and if she could have full mobility back, and she could have her health and livelihood, and and she's off chemo and steroids that was being used that caused kidney damage, and someone with all those circumstances could have a transformation, then how could you not? Everyone can do this and stay the course. 7 months it took before she even saw a parasite. And so she kind of, just think about that. And I don't think you need to see that. I think that's kind of like, who knows what you will see, but just think about that for a second of staying the course over time. And I would say everyone on this call has toxins that they have to deal with, just like most people, but especially people that are having heightened symptoms.
We did a docuseries called GMOs Revealed, and I have to tell you, my jaw was on the ground. It was much worse than I ever could have imagined. So in the GMO world, there's really a few schools of debate, but even for the people who are anti-GMO, they fall into two camps. One camp is that the genetically modified food in and of itself, independent of the herbicides and other toxic things that might be sprayed on them, are a problem. Some people say, oh no, the GMO'd foods in and of themselves aren't the problem. It is just what's sprayed on them that's the problem. In my mind, after all the work and research we did and all the interviews that we did, I fall down on the side that it's all a bad thing. You start genetically modifying organisms, it's not a good thing, especially when you start putting that stuff in your body. And there's been some basic science research done where you take controlled research, animal-based research, rats, unfortunately. It's never a good idea to be a rat around a laboratory that's trying to look at things. You could fall into the wrong category. So they give these rats, some of them give them GMO foods, and then they give other rats the same foods, but they're non-GMO version. But the GMO'd rats, in short, started growing tumors and having all kinds of health issues. So I think GMOs in and of themselves are a really bad, dangerous, untested experiment for the most part. It's like, theoretically, you put this stuff into a human population, it should be fine. What happens if it's not? The genie's out of the bottle, which it is, and now you got some real issues. The second side of the equation is, why are these GMOs built? Or in other words, once we create them, for example, if you get GMO'd corn, GMO'd wheat, what have you, we can, and the GMOs are made by Monsanto, and there's a whole thing going on about this now, and a good thing actually. I think they're, David and Goliath, and I think David just dealt the death blow to Goliath, which is the big multi-billion-dollar multinational companies that have been poisoning us. But the big story to me is the environmental catastrophe. I think Roundup sprayed on GMO crops. So basically, if nobody knows about this, Monsanto makes these intellectual property protected, means patented seeds that are genetically modified, so you can grow these crops that would be resistant to an herbicide referred to as Roundup, whose key ingredient is a thing called glyphosate. And what could happen is, when you grow these foods, they'll be resistant to this toxic stuff. It will kill everything else, but it won't kill your crop. And you can get bigger crop yields, etc. Well, what happens? Well, now you got this frankenfood, it's genetically modified stuff. And then the bigger story is billions and billions and billions of pounds of glyphosate was sprayed into the environment. And it's water soluble, meaning it goes into the soil. And when it goes into the soil, it's killing the biome of the soil. And then it's being washed into our water supply, our tributaries, and then it's going into the Mississippi River, and it's coming down to Cancer Alley, which is now Cancer Alley because so much, if you saw GMOs, Dr. Zach Bush really did a great job of documenting all this. That 60-mile stretch between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, they call it Cancer Alley, highest incidence of cancer anywhere in the world. Why? Because all of the breadbasket of America has been spraying this stuff. It gets down to the Mississippi and it concentrates down at the bottom. And at the bottom now you got people getting all these funky diseases. People are wondering why. It's no great mystery. So what's happened now? We release this docuseries on GMOs, and babies are going to starve in the world. GMOs are the solution to world hunger, and now because of our work, people are going to be afraid of them and they're not going to buy them, and then people are going to starve. And the data is in. Monsanto's done the research. This stuff doesn't cause cancer. This is all hype and you're scaring people. We're fear-mongering. Well, not happy that it happened, but I'm happy to say the truth is coming out. And there was a recent court case in Northern California where we had a groundskeeper who was spraying Roundup, who is now deathly ill with cancer. He doesn't have very long to live. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's been in some of our work, was part of the legal team that brought this case to court against Monsanto. And in court, there was an award of $289 million for this one individual. Now, I might not remember the numbers exactly, 289 I remember. I think roughly 250 million were what's referred to as punitive damages. Punitive damages mean, hey, we're gonna give this guy 39 million because your product caused his cancer and he's gonna die. So we're gonna award him that money. We're gonna also award him another 250 million because you guys lied, you deceived. Punitive meaning we're going to punish you. So not only do you have culpability in putting this product in the market, but you also lied about it, you created deception around it, you lied about your data. All this stuff was put in front of a jury, and the jury said in the end, $289 million for this one guy. Well, guess what? There's thousands and thousands of cases following it now. So now Goliath, Monsanto, the blood is in the water, the sharks, all the attorneys that do these types of lawsuits, they're advertising on TV now saying, have you been exposed to Roundup? Are you experiencing any of the following conditions? Let us know. You may be entitled to compensation, blah, blah, blah. At this point, I think, I don't think they're going to be able to unring that bell. I think now, so the truth is coming out. The lawyers now are jumping on board, and I think they're just going to kill this monster. And in the meantime, there's this expansion of demand for organic foods, non-GMO foods, the non-GMO indicia that goes on the varying packages people are looking for, which I highly recommend. And then people say, what are we going to do? 50 years this stuff lives in the soil. Yes, but some very prescient, some very smart people started to take seeds and put them into seed banks, and protect these seeds from the environment so when the storm can pass, we can repopulate the earth with, once again, healthy crops. Is there a connection between GMOs and dementia, GMOs and Alzheimer's? The answer is, in my mind, I think it's absolute. People might debate it, and it might not be a direct connection. Here's what I do know. When glyphosate's getting into your system, it is destroying your gut microbiome. You start destroying your gut microbiome, you're going to start having all kinds of conditions that might be autoimmune based, might be neurological based. The gut microbiome, there's more neurology there than there's in your brain. And there's an absolute well-established connection between the gut and the brain. These two things have to interact, have to integrate, etc. You start destroying the gut, has to have an effect on the whole system. And here's here's the thing that I think most people aren't grasping. We're too dedicated in this culture to try to name diseases, name conditions. And I get that, it's giving identity to something. And somebody might say, well, they've got dementia, they've got Alzheimer's, as if that lives in isolation, which it doesn't. All those things to me are symptoms of the big picture, what's going on here, saying, okay, there's manifest symptoms. But it's like saying, I bash my finger in a door and it's swollen and it's purple, etc. If we were just to focus on the finger, saying, oh, you got a finger problem, I'd say, no, I got a symptom in my finger. I got a problem that there's a door that keeps closing on it, and that's affecting what's happening in my finger. But it also could be affecting other aspects of me. It's like trying to isolate these conditions and say, I want a targeted approach towards treating them. There's some semblance of validity to that, but it's very incomplete in its considerations. The big picture is, yes, you start depleting the gut microbiome, you've got foreign proteins leaking through your epithelium because you've got glyphosate in your system and you've created a leaky gut. Can that and will that affect your brain function? Yes. Will that maybe lead to dementia, to Alzheimer's? Unequivocally to me, yes. Might some people react differently and have other types of problems as a result? Yes. Does this stuff mimic things like multiple sclerosis, and people get diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and then they get some fairly toxic treatments for it? Yes. In the end, as soon as you start to take the whole and start to focus your microphone at little pieces of the whole and forget about the rest of it, you're missing, for lack of a better term, the big picture. So the answer to your question, and for the way I see the world, the lens that I look through, is yes. Can GMOs, or the effect of GMOs translate into a thing called dementia? Absolutely. But I believe that context is horribly inadequate to understand the problem.
Let's take a look at the mechanisms that cause autoimmune disease. We know that gluten is usually a trigger or root cause. It is known to cause an inflammatory response in the body. We see more and more stores selling gluten-free products. This is a step in the right direction and might be a part of the healing journey for many. We want to avoid foods that are bad for the body and the gut. By doing so, we help to prevent the body from going into overdrive. Let's take a look at other protocols and natural medicines that we can use to get rid of the toxins in our bodies.
And then we have a large percent of people dying of cancer, and we can win the war on cancer if we change the way we eat. What I'm saying right now is that nutritional science has made such advances to be able to protect people's lives, to live longer and better than ever before in human history. We have the answers today to keep people well, but the answers are not being delivered to our population. We're still being governed by the pharmaceutical industry, the chemical industry, the processed food industry, and the fast food industry. We're eating ourselves to death. And the idea that the food's going to taste better, we're going to enjoy our life more.
Let's say, for example, with a young person that gets sick and then they have a very violent reaction or potential fatality in connection with COVID-19. But what you're talking about here is compromised health already, and due to poor eating habits, and perhaps, and we could talk about this as well, are there issues with toxins, so toxin-laden food or chemicals, pesticides, various toxins that are entering into our body, so we think that it's healthy, but it's really not. And so then when we get then exposed to a virus or any type of thing like this, then it becomes the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yes, we have broad spectrum, ubiquitously, we have an immunosuppressed, nutritionally deficient population who are eating foods that do not supply humans with the nutrients they need for normal immune function. What I call superimmunity is not really superimmunity. It's the normal immune function that we all are deserving of if we eat a diet that's based on enough nutrients, both the amount of nutrients and the wide variety of nutrients that humans need. When we have deficient populations, they eventually develop chronic disease, but they also, before they develop chronic disease like heart attacks and cancers and autoimmune conditions, they also have immunosuppression that's going on for many, many years before that. And with a novel virus like COVID-19, it can unmask those deficiencies, because this immune system that's not functioning normally now can allow an infectious agent to replicate, invade, and cause damage to tissues, which couldn't occur in a normal person. It just demonstrates that we have an abnormal population of people being exposed to this virus. And these abnormalcies have spread across the world, because as the fast food industry has spread across the world, we've spread these modern diseases with us. And now when we have now when our world is smaller and people are in close contact and travel all over the place, all over the world, we're going to spread these viral and bacterial agents quickly, because we're all so interconnected in our small world today. And the fast food industry has penetrated all parts of the globe. And the breaking the camel's back is maybe in Asian countries, they ate so much white rice, which is junk food, but they also had a lot of vegetables and a lot of other things that maybe counterbalance to the white rice to a degree. But now when they have all that white rice, and on top of it, now they have fast food and soda and bread and burgers and pizza and donuts and bagels, and now they're really immunosuppressed, and they're starting to become overweight and diabetic in the Asian countries, in China and South Korea, just like we are. So I'm hoping this could be a stepping stone to a better world and better health for all. And the vaccine may be somewhat helpful, but it's not going to be a long-term solution, because a new problem is going to arise in the future. And the vaccine is not going to be offer 100% protection in people that are immunosuppressed, and the vaccine is not going to be without some people being hurt by it, because it's going to have people that have certain medical conditions are going to be hurt by the vaccine, just like they're hurt by other vaccines. There are people that are susceptible to that type of thing. The better your health is, the less likely you're going to be hurt by a drug anyway. But even if the vaccine was relatively safe or relatively effective, which we don't even know if that's the case at this point.
True, and with the people behind it as well, with Johnson & Johnson being a funding source, there's already been billions of dollars in lawsuits against one. I mean, there's one for over $2 billion, and then another one that's in place for around $5 billion against Johnson & Johnson, which is the funding source behind the vaccine creation.
What I'm saying is, right now, unless you pay attention to nutritional quality and removal of toxins, you can't be good at paying attention to the amount of calories you're going to consume, because it's going to make you want to overeat calories and become a calorie consuming monster and become overweight. So all these things are interrelated. It's never one thing. It's a mixture of factors that come together that create the biology that's commensurate with staying sick and getting sick. And then you go to doctors and they add drugs which are toxic on top of your natural toxins in your body. I tell people it's like hitting yourself with a hammer, and you go to a doctor who gives you a pain medication, like an opiate, and the next day you hit yourself with a hammer again. It's like you got to take the hammer away. So in other words, we have to have an approach that looks at all aspects of stress on the body biologically and toxicologically as well, in order for the body to get well, because you're right. The buildup of metabolic waste and toxins in the body are the byproduct of living an unhealthy life. Because when you live an unhealthy life, when you live a healthful life, where you're not exposing yourself to poisons, then you're going to have a body that's going to be more functionally.
Here's an analogy. When you have autoimmune disease, you're inflamed. Okay, really, autoimmune disease is no different than just saying you're inflamed. It's an inflammatory condition. Okay, it just depends on what body parts are being attacked. And when you're inflamed, think of your body as like on fire. So think of like a forest fire. And so if you have somebody throw a cigarette butt in the forest and start the forest fire, now the fire is burning. Do you have to throw any more cigarette butt in the forest to keep the fire burning? No, the fire is going to just burn on its own until it burns out. That's autoimmune disease. The gluten will be the cigarette butt. So even though if you stop eating the gluten, you stop throwing the cigarette butt, if you already started inflammation, guess what? That's going to continue to burn unless you put out the fire. That's where the supplement comes in. Okay, so that's really important. And by the way, it's not just supplements, it's diet, plant-based, all these things that Jonathan talked about, managing stress as well. And when it comes to autoimmune, it's all about triggers. So you want to identify the triggers, which could be food. That's why Jonathan says gluten-free, right? That's certainly one factor. There may be other foods you need to eliminate as well, because here's the thing, folks. With autoimmune disease, if you think everybody are sensitive to the same exact thing, then you probably haven't seen or worked as a doctor and seen very many people with autoimmune. I have. I worked with over 5,000 people, and no two people are exactly the same. So to say like just gluten-free and that's gonna solve all your problem for every single one of you is probably not true. I think gluten-free is the foundation of it, but some of you may need to cut out more things. Next question is from Leah. Recently got off birth control. Is this time of my body readjusting while off it going to have an effect on the protocol and my recovery? Do you have advice? So if you're off birth control, is the body readjusting gonna cause problem for you? No. Remember that the protocol is one of the primary objective of the Wildlife Protocol is detoxification. In fact, it's the philosophy, it's a stand that Jonathan takes to help you with detox. And when you are taking birth control pill, that is a toxin you have to detox, right? I mean, it's a medication, yeah, but I mean, any hormone that you take even the hormone your body produces on its own has to be eliminated. So detoxification is really important because that's the primary route of elimination for your body to get rid of hormones. So doing the program can only help you to get rid of the hormones that you've been taking for a long time, okay? For Tammy's question is chronic hives. Remember, hive is always an immune response, kind of like an allergy, but really just on the skin. So typically what you want to do is you want to address what is causing the hives, right? Without knowing what's causing the hive, you're just treating the symptom. You're wondering if you should do a heavy metal cleanse. Absolutely, because when you do metal cleanse, you're decreasing toxic load. And when you decrease toxic load, you're in effect, improving your immune function. So definitely doing the metal cleanse is helpful, but you also want to see if there's any potential trigger from the dietary, any food that you're eating that could be triggering that. One of the the goals of Jonathan's program is to help heal leaky gut. And we know the gut has a lot to do with it because when you have leaky gut, you tend to be more inflamed. And another objective of Jonathan's program is to help you with detox, which can also cause these inflammatory patterns and cause neuropathy. So again, and every time I come on these Q&A, and I'm hoping that you guys get this, okay? This big idea that it's not about treating a disease. It's not about treating a symptom. That's what Western medicine is for. And there's a time and place for that. But there's also a time and place, and I believe is a foundational thing, for us to get healthy. And because you're healthy, then the symptom and the disease goes away as a side effect of you becoming healthy. So think of this program more as a health restoration type of program, rather than a treatment for peripheral neuropathy. And I'm sure Jonathan will tell you that it's not a treatment for any one particular disease, but it's an amazing way to help you to get rid of some of these toxicities and junk in your body, restore your gut health, as well as reduce inflammation. Without having a long-term vision, then you're kind of just going day by day. Do I feel better yet? Do I feel better yet? Am I there yet? Am I there yet? And what happens is drive you mad and you end up not getting the result. And remember just with Natalia's story that, took her a few months, but the end result is life-changing. But it took her 7 months. I mean, even that's pretty fast for the type of condition that she has. So, you want to stick with it, kind of like a long-term investment.
Dr. Geringer, let's talk about some of the harmful foods that are out there that people are consuming a lot of in a traditional American diet. What are you seeing as some of the bigger triggers for both gut dysbiosis, gut dysfunction, and also autoimmune disease?
The key foods that I usually tell patients to stay away from is number one, gluten. Gluten is described as the glue that keeps things together. So I see a lot of gluten sensitivity in patients such as our autoimmune patients or our Hashimoto's patients. Is it the gluten itself or is it the glyphosate that's found in the gluten? You know what? Instead of saying, okay, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Just cut that out of your dietary habits. Number two, dairy. Dairy puts a lot of stress on our gut. And also with dairy, what it does is that it actually prevents your body from going down the correct pathway to repair your gut. So what dairy does is that it actually is a foreign protein that goes right through the gap of your intestinal mucosal membrane, which we call that leaky gut. So what we want to do is that we want to steer away from dairy as much as possible.
Dr. Geringer, now, a lot of people have a hard time healing, quote unquote, their leaky gut, or correcting the intestinal permeability, or just fixing this gut issue because they're dealing with other deeper layers. So they've tried the gut, they've tried the kind of gut restores out there, or they've tried they've tried all these leaky gut repair things, and it doesn't work for them. And it makes sense to me because I understand all these deeper layers that are involved. What would you say to that person that's struggling? Are there deeper layers that prevent the healing of the gut lining?
Absolutely. A lot of times you might have just one symptom that might appear, but your gut lining have different receptor cells when it deals with pain and inflammation. For example, if we have a cut on the outer part of our skin, we feel that pain. That pain pathway is different from your pain pathway, your receptor cells in your mucosal membrane. So even though you don't feel like you're compromised, I usually use the car analogy. You need a tune-up on your car, or you also need an oil change. Our body needs the same system. So what the Parapurify does is that it actually helps your body, facilitate your body to get rid of these parasites. Oh my gosh, how do I get parasites in my body? Well, parasites are everywhere. Actually, pets, your little cute little doggy, your little kitty cats, your pets actually can transmit parasites into your body. And if you have a weak immune system, or if you have gut issues, or if you have leaky gut, the chance of that pathogens to go down that funnel of what we call the leaky gut junction, what happens? Your body gets invaded by these parasites. Another thing is that the colon cleanse. Going back to our colon, our digestive tract, it is so important for us to keep that microbiome nice and balanced, especially our colon, because you need to move your bowels in order for your body to heal itself. Bowels are waste material. When you're constipated, what happens is that you need to be able to move that toxic waste out of your body. If you're not able to move that toxic waste out of your body, when you're constipated, what happens is that toxic waste that's sitting in your body actually leaks into the intestinal mucosal membrane that causes leaky gut. So your body sends these messengers to your immune system to activate it. So it's so important for you to actually address all these three components at the same time, so that you're able to go in there and detoxify the body, you're able to purify the body, and you're able to move those toxic waste out of your body so your gut can heal.
In this episode, we walked you through some of the biggest triggers of autoimmune disease. We looked at the effects of gluten on the gut and the autoimmune diseases that call for an elimination of gluten from the diet. We discovered that wheat gluten and GMOs are generally not good for most people, and there is no risk associated with trying out a gluten-free diet to see if it helps you to restore your body from abnormal symptoms. We learned about the effects that pesticides have on the body and why we're being exposed to these more than previously thought, and also discussed heavy metal toxicity and pesticide exposure. we discovered some amazing ways that we can detox our bodies from these autoimmune triggers. We also learned about the importance of a healthy, balanced diet. Food addictions are real, and we discussed how it may be a symptom of toxic overload in the body. Again, we are not helpless. Removing these toxins from the body is possible. By paying attention to the symptoms we experience, we can discover which triggers we need to tackle. Let's take a look at some of the important information that we covered during this episode. You can use these bullet points to guide you on your journey to discover a holistic approach to preventing and reversing the triggers of autoimmune disease. In this episode, we discovered that gluten is related to autoimmune conditions across the board. A high percentage of the population who don't have celiac disease are responding negatively to gluten. The westernization of the global diet has increased the incidence of inflammatory and autoimmune diseases. Dietary fiber is important because it is the food for the bacteria in our gut. Genetically modified organisms, GMOs, are designed to survive pesticides, making them unhealthy for us to eat. The active ingredient in pesticides has been classified as a carcinogen by the World Health Organization. Studies show that some babies are being born with 287 chemicals as found in the umbilical cord. You can be predisposed to autoimmune disease by your genetics, but you can prevent these by protecting yourself from the environmental exposure to toxins like glyphosate. Pesticides are destroying the gut microbiome, which makes us susceptible to autoimmune and neurodegenerative diseases, including Alzheimer's.